In the biggest, brownest, muddiest river in Africa, 2 crocodiles lay with their heads just above the water. One of the crocodiles was enormous. The other was not so big. "Do you know what I would like for my lunch today?" the enormous crocodile asked. "No," the not-so-big one said. "What?" The enormous crocodile grinned, showing hundreds of sharp white teeth. "For my lunch today," he said, "I would like a nice, juicy little child." "Oh, I never eat children," the not-so-big one said. "Only fish." "Ho, ho, ho," cried the enormous crocodile. "I'll bet if you saw a fat, juicy little child paddling in the water over there at this very moment, you'd gulp him up in one gollop."
Suddenly there was a tremendous whooshing noise. It was Humpy Rumpy, the hippopotamus. He came crashing and snorting out of the jungle. His head was down low and he was galloping at terrific speed. "Look out, Toto!" shouted Humpy Rumpy. "Look out, Mary! That's not a coconut tree. It's the enormous crocodile and he wants to eat you up." Humpy Rumpy charged straight at the enormous crocodile. He caught him with his giant head and sent him tumbling and skidding over the ground. "Owie!" cried the crocodile. "Help! Stop! Where am I?" Toto and Mary ran back to the town as fast as they could.
Mr. Pig scowled. He directed 4 footmen to clear up the mess. Then with a disdainful wave of the hand, he indicated to the giant that he should seat himself on top of the chest of drawers, on top of the grand piano. "What a fizz-buzzing, flush-banking seat!" cried the BFG. "Is going to be burgers a snug and a rug up here." "Dreams," he said, "is very mysterious things. They're floating around in the air like little wispy, misty bubbles. And all the time they're searching for sleeping people." "Can you see them?" Sophie asked. "Never at first." "Then how do you catch them if you can't see them?" Sophie asked. "Aha," said the BFG. "Now we is getting on to the dark and dusty secrets. I won't tell us all." "I is trusting you," the BFG said. He closed his eyes and sat quite still for a moment while Sophie waited. "A dream," he said, as it goes whiffling through the night air, is making a tiny little buzzing humming noise. But this little buzzy hum is so silvery soft it is impossible for a human being to be hearing it.
"Hey, Mummy!" shouted Fruit Salt suddenly. "I've decided I want a squirrel. Get me one of those squirrels." "Don't be silly, sweetheart," said Mrs. Salt. "They all belong to Mr. Wonka." "I don't care about that," shouted Veruca. "I want one. All I've got at home is 2 dogs and 4 cats and 6 bunny rabbits and 2 parakeets and 3 canaries and a green parrot and a turtle and a bowl of goldfish and a cage of white mice and a silly old hamster. I want a squirrel." "All right, my pet," Mrs. Salt said soothingly. "Mummy'll get you a squirrel just as soon as she possibly can." "But I don't want any old squirrel," Veruca shouted. "I want a trained squirrel." At this point, Mr. Salt, Veruca's father, stepped forward. "Very well, Wonka," he said importantly, taking out a wallet full of money. "How much do you want for one of these squirrels? Name your price."
"Of course, they're real people," Mr. Wonka answered. "They're Oompa Loompas. Grandpa Joe was the oldest of the 4 grandparents. He was 96 and a half. And that is just about as old as anybody can be." As you thought. In a couple of minutes, Mr. Hoppy was back on the balcony with a sheet of paper in his hand. "I'm going to lower it to you on a bit of string," he said, "or it might blow away. Here it comes." Mrs. Silver caught the paper and held it up in front of her. This is what she read. "Is you trot, tag, ragib, ragib. You not know, is you trot? Wag purr, toos purr, gnuffs purr, will purr, loose purr, egg purr, elzog, plug, top no taff, is you trot, top no taff, tag no, elbog, doff."
Good Lord, said Badger. It's Rat! You saucy beast, said Mr. Fox. I should have guessed we'd find you down here somewhere. Go away, shrieked Rat. Go on, beat it. This is my private pitch. Shut up, said Mr. Fox. I will not shut up, shrieked Rat. This is my place and I got here first. Mr. Fox gave a brilliant smile. Not slugs, George cried out. I couldn't eat slugs. Whenever I see a live slug on a piece of lettuce, Grandma said, I gobble it up quick before it crawls away. Delicious. She squeezed her lips together tight so that her mouth became a tiny, wrinkled hole. Delicious, she said again. Worms and slugs and beetly bugs. You don't know what's good for you.
My neck can stretch terribly high, much higher than eagles can fly. If I venture to show just how high it would go, you'd lose sight of my head in the sky.
But slowly, majestically, like some fabulous golden balloon, with the seagulls all straining at the strings above, the giant peach rose up dripping out of the water and began climbing towards the heavens. In a flash, everybody was up top. Isn't it beautiful? They cried. What a marvellous feeling. Goodbye, sharks. Oh boy, this is the way to travel. Matilda by Roald Dahl. Matilda is the most famous bookworm, no thanks to her ghastly father. Her father thinks she's a little scab. Her mother spent all afternoon playing bingo, and her head mistress, Miss Trunchbull, she's the worst of all. By the time she was 3, Matilda had taught herself to read by studying newspapers and magazines that lay around.
There you are, Bob Trotter, the Trunchbull said, and once again her voice became soft, persuasive, even gentle. It's all for you, every bit of it. As you enjoyed that slice you had yesterday so very much, I ordered cook to bake you an extra large one all for yourself. Well, thank you, the boy said, totally bemused. Thank cook, not me, the Trunchbull said. Thank you, cook, the boy said. The cook stood there like a shriveled boot-face, tight-lipped, implacable, disapproving. She looked as though her mouth was full of lemon juice. Come on then, the Trunchbull said. Why don't you cut yourself a nice big slice and try it? What? Now, the boy said, cautious. He knew there was a catch in this somewhere, but he wasn't sure where. Can't I take it home instead? He asked. That would be impolite, the Trunchbull said, with a crafty grin. You must show Cookie here how grateful you are for all the trouble she's taken.
Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf. As soon as the wolf began to feel that he would like a decent meal, he went and knocked on Grandma's door. When Grandma opened it, she saw the sharp white teeth, the horrid grin, and Wolfie said, "May I come in?" Poor Grandmama was terrified. "He's going to eat me up," she cried. And she was absolutely right. He ate her up in one big bite. But Grandmama was small and tough, and Wolfie wailed, "That's not enough. I haven't yet begun to feel that I have had a decent meal." He ran around the kitchen yelping, "I've got to have a second helping." Then added with a frightful leer, "I'm therefore going to wait right here till little Miss Red Riding Hood comes home from walking in the wood.
The animal I really dig, above all others, is the pig. Pigs are noble, pigs are clever, pigs are courteous. However, now and then to break the rule, one meets a pig who is a fool. What, for example, would you say if strolling through the woods one day, right there in front of you, you saw a pig who built a house of straw? The wolf who saw it licked his lips and said, "That pig has had his chips." Mr. Twit started eating, twisting the long tomato-covered strings around his fork and shoveling them into his mouth. Soon there was tomato sauce all over his hairy chin. "It's not as good as the ordinary kind," he said, talking with his mouth full. "It's too squishy." "I find it very tasty," Mrs. Twit said. She was watching him from the other end of the table. It gave her great pleasure that he was eating worms. "I find it rather bitter," Mr. Twit said. "It's got a distinctly bitter taste. Buy the other kind next time." Mrs. Twit waited until Mr. Twit had eaten the whole plateful. Then she said, "You want to know why your spaghetti was squishy?" Mr. Twit wiped the tomato sauce from his beard. "Why? Because it was worms!" cried Mrs. Twit, clapping her hands and stamping her feet on the floor and rocking with a horrible laughter. "Ha ha ha ha!"
"Hey, my spaghetti's moving!" Blech.
"Tonight," the old woman said, "I'm going to tell you how to recognise a witch when you see one." "Can you always be sure?" I asked. "No," she said, "you can't. And that's the trouble, but you can make a pretty good guess." She was dropping cigar ash all over her lap, and I hoped she wasn't going to catch fire before she told me how to recognise a witch. "In the first place," she said, "a real witch is certain always to be wearing gloves when you meet her." "Surely not always," I said. "What about the summer when it's hot?" "Even in the summer," my grandmother said. "She has to. Do you want to know why?" "Why?" I said. "Because she doesn't have fingernails. Instead of fingernails, she has thin, curvy claws, like a cat. And she wears gloves to hide them."
For I consider brains far superior to money in every way. You may have noticed that if one has money without brains, he cannot use it to his advantage. But if one has brains without money, they will enable him to live comfortably to the end of his days.